So today we'll be discussing about Azure global infrastructure. So being a cloud security professional or a cloud support professional, you need to have a better understanding about the infrastructure of your cloud service provider because your cloud service provider will have a variety of services and the different level of high availability and the different level of accessibility features. So uh, based on your requirement, you can choose what level of availability or what level of scalability is required. So to choose the right architectural design for your organization's cloud infrastructure, basically you need to have a better understanding about the service providers infrastructure. And here understanding about the global infrastructure of Azure. So basically they have their uh, location, that is their regions, globally 58 regions they are in, and they are having their data centers in nearly 140 countries. So out of 140 countries, so 58 regions has the full-fledged cloud service infrastructure. And in this picture, you can see the connectivity between all the regions. So this is how the connectivity is. And initially understanding about the global infrastructure, so we need to understand about the regions, geographies, availability zones, Azure edge zones, Azure edge zones with carrier, and Azure private edge zones. So initially understanding about an Azure region. See, basically, a region consists of multiple availability zones. So in the picture in the right side, you can see. So where in one region you'll have a minimum of three availability zones, and all the three availability zones will be connected directly using the low latency network. So the connectivity will be using their private network. So basically, when you're creating any of your resource, so you need to choose in which region you want to create the resource. Uh, say example, in India, they have three regions. One is South India, the other one is West India, and Central India. They have three regions. And apart from India, they have their regions in different countries and different regions. So basically, before creating any resource, you need to choose the right region. So based on what you can choose the region. See, when you are choosing the region, there are few considerations always which you should keep in your mind. The first important consideration is the data privacy policy. So I believe most of you would be aware about the data privacy policy. Every country have their own data privacy policy. So where the data privacy policy will not allow certain data to be stored outside the country. uh, there are some critical informations like their countries individuals personally identifiable informations like the biometric information of a person, or their account details, or maybe in India their Aadhaar card information. So these informations are more sensitive informations which cannot be stored outside the country. So similar like this, every country they will have their own data privacy policy. So being a Azure support professional, before creating any resource, first of all, you need to have a better understanding about the data, what kind of data you're going to store and what kind of data you're going to process and so on. So if the data that is going to be stored or processed, if the data comes under the data privacy policy, so there is no other option. You need to choose the same country to which the data belongs to. Maybe you may have the other data which doesn't comes under the data privacy policy. Say example, you are developing a software, so the data related to the software you can keep it anywhere. So because these kind of information doesn't comes under the data privacy policy, so you can keep those data anywhere. So again, the second choice where you will choose again. See, mostly the region which you are choosing that should be closer to your end user. So say example, all your employees are sitting in USA, and you're supposed to create the virtual machines for those users. So obviously you need to choose the region which is closer to the user location, that is USA. So this is how you need to choose the region. There are some situations or scenarios where your data might be accessed by the end users who is accessing from any part of the world. Something like you may have an e-commerce website, or you may have a news portal. So when you speak about a news portal, so that can be accessed by any of the users from any part of the world. So in that case, how you are going to choose your region? And also you need to consider the cost, because every country has a different tax percentage, and also the cost of the running the data center operation cost varies. So again, based on that, the charges is going to vary from country to country. So if cost is a very big constraint for your organization, so if you want to choose only the cheapest location, so you can choose the cheapest region. So based on all these criterias, you can choose whichever the region you want. And whenever you create your resource in a particular region, and you can also have the some standard features like the availability features, or something like that. So based on whatever you need, you can choose whichever the region is more convenient or comfortable to your environment. And speaking about geography, so just a while before I was speaking about the data privacy policy. So where the sensitive data should not be kept outside the country. So in that case, see, we'll also have, say example, I'm creating my data center um, in cloud. I'm choosing one particular region. Uh, in that case, there are possibility the entire region may go down. As like you may have your on-premises data center. Due to some reason, your on-premises data center may go down, maybe due to flood or fire or earthquake or any other reason. So to handle this kind of situations, or this kind of scenarios, most of the organization will have the DCDR solution. So DCDR is the data center disaster recovery. So whatever the data center resources we have in or on premises, so similar kind of infrastructure we'll have in another location also. Maybe you may have your DR site in, you may have your primary site in India, and your DR site in Singapore or in New Zealand or somewhere else. But when you speak about the data privacy policy, so where your privacy policy doesn't allows you to store your data outside the country. So in that case, when you're choosing the DR site, it should be within the same country. Coming to the uh, Azure, here too we can have the DCDR solution. So you may have a primary data center in one region, and you may have the DR set up in another region. So if you're choosing the DR site in the region which is outside the country, again the data privacy policy comes into the picture, so which is not going to allow you. So to avoid that kind of difficulties, so Azure will have multiple regions within the same country, but not in all the countries. In their potential uh, countries, they'll have multiple regions within the same country. So that is the uh, uh, that is basically here I'm explaining on the geographies. So geographies is nothing but a region or a set of region which comes under the same data privacy policy. So that is basically the compliance boundaries, we call it as. So uh, when you speak India, in India we have three regions. So these three regions put together, we call it as a geography. Uh, with the same scenario when we speak about AWS, so basically AWS has only one region in India, that is in Mumbai. So if any organization who want to have DR solution within the country in AWS, so they don't have the option. But in case of Azure, so they'll have the option where they can have the DCDR site within the same country in different regions. Are you able to understand? If you have any questions related to regions and geographies, please let me know.
So the policies, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So how can we get those policy detail based on the regions, like
See,
India or
see,
any other?
the privacy policy is going to based on the country.
Mhm.
So first of all, you need to know which country's data you are going to store and process.
Okay.
Okay, and you can get the privacy policy documents of that particular country from their maybe their country's website. So through that you can understand about the data which comes under the privacy policy or not. So
Okay.
every country they are publishing the data privacy policy in public. So with that document you can verify.
So the Azure will not provide those information.
Azure will not, because there is nothing to played by the Azure, because that is again going to be depending on the country. So where it is the customer's responsibility to choose the right region. So where Azure or any service provider, cloud service provider is not taking any responsibility on that,
So
because
for example, if without knowing
Hmm.
any one of them,
Sorry, your voice is not clear.
it, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so if in case by mistake they are
Mm,
placed any region
mm,
and they are accessing the data, so what
mm.
is the, I mean, the Azure will allow to do that or it
Yeah,
will
Azure
block?
will allow, because Azure is not going to look into your data. They don't have any control on your data. They will not have any access to your data, so they cannot look into your data.
So
So
we have,
basically as a customer, you'll have the access to the data, and you know about the characteristics of your data, and obviously you should know the data privacy policy and you should store the data accordingly. Maybe if in case if you violate the data privacy policy, obviously you're going to face the consequences, legal consequences.
okay, got it.
Okay. Any more questions?
Hi, this is Raja.
Yes, Mr. Raja.
Regarding data privacy policy,
Mm,
let's say like if I am a government organization. Okay,
okay.
I am running a on-premises data center in my
Mm,
region.
okay.
So as to build a DR solution,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking out my DR solution for my on-premises data center.
Mm-hmm.
So as a government organization, so
Mm,
everything like all this data is very sensitive
mm-hmm.
data, so that I want to replicate same data into
Mm,
the DR
mm,
solution. So in
mm-hmm.
that concept,
Mm.
so which region I have to choose? Like in the same country, or I can go
That's
with
what
the.
again you need to refer the data privacy policy, because all
Okay.
data are not going to be sensitive. Some of the data might be uh, uh, can be visible to everyone. So those kind of data you can keep it outside the country also. But speaking about especially on the government institutions, so
Yeah.
mostly the government institutions will not prefer to store their data outside the country. So even the cloud service providers also have a special service for government institutions. They call it as a Gov Cloud. So in that cases, you can go with the Gov Cloud facilities. But I'm not sure whether in every country they don't have this kind of service offered. So based on the availability on that particular country, the service provider can offer you the Gov Cloud services.
Okay. It's in case of some critical services which is not some more sensitive. So those kind of services, as you said, we can
Yeah,
build
you
up
can.
DR in the same or different regions or different countries as well.
Correct, correct. Yes,
Okay,
you
fine.
can.
In case of very high critical, it's a very highly revenue business critical applications. So in that case, like we have to plan it for the same region. That would be better options for us, right? So
Correct.
to avoid that data, data loss or something, data stealing, something like that.
Correct.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. So we'll move on further, discussing about the availability zones. So availability zones are basically in one region, they'll have multiple availability zone, at least three availability zone. See, availability zone, basically it'll have a bunch of data centers, a collection of data centers. We call it as a availability zone. Uh, we all know that the data center resources like servers or storage, all these are electronic components. It can fail at any time, and there are other factors also, like flood or earthquake, some natural calamity may bring down the data center. So in that cases, uh, the service provider cannot say that the services are not available, or if the service provider is not in the position to serve the service for the customers, so obviously the customer will not uh, put their interest in choosing the cloud services. So to handle this kind of scenarios, so most of the cloud service providers, they'll have their data centers in different location on the same region. Say example, consider India is one, sorry, Chennai is one region. So in Chennai, they will not have their data center in one particular location. They'll have in two different location. Maybe some of you would have came through the 2015 flood in Chennai. So all the organizations, most of the companies in the OMR, or most of the companies in Mahindra city got affected because of that particular flood. So and also some of the companies in DLF IT Park also got affected. But at the same time, the companies which was running from Ambattur IT Park was not affected. So basically, it's up to the geographical location which in which you are choosing your data center. So basically, the cloud service provider will choose uh, a geographically different location in the same region, so that if one region gets affected due to some reason, for the same reason another availability zone will not go down, so they will have their location chosen with that particular experiences or past experience, or all the other statistical informations. So they will choose a geographically different location, so that if one region, one availability zone goes down, still they will be able to serve the services from the other availability zone. So that is basically the availability zone. So even while creating your resources, like your virtual machine or a storage, you'll have the option to choose the a region, and also you may have your data replicated to multiple availability zones. So you can have the locally redundant solution, or you can go with the region redundant solutions or whatever. So that's a very important thing before creating any resource. So you need to have this kind of considerations in your architectural design of your cloud. So you need to choose whether you're going to go with a single region deployment, with a single zone deployment, or a single region with a multiple zone deployment, or multi-region with multi-zone deployment, or whatever. So basically, this is how the service provider has their data center, and how you're going to make use of this availability zone and the regions to ensure the high availability. That's up to you. So based on whatever the service you configure, and based on the level of replication or the resiliency you choose, so you'll achieve that level of availability. So that is basically about the availability zones. Is that clear? If there is any more questions, please let me know. Okay, and discussing further about Azure edge zones. Uh, See, when you have your applications that is published from any one particular region, say example, you are publishing it from India. Any user who is accessing your application from Europe or US or Australia, so definitely there will be some latency uh, delay, so that the India user will have the faster response, and Europe or US users will have the slow response. Even this slow response may affect your business. Maybe that may lead to business loss or profit loss or whatever. So if the company decides that they should not face any latency issues, uh, maybe if they have their data center hosted it, they have all their services hosted from the Azure cloud, and from the on premises, if the end user are accessing the application, they should be able to access the services with a single digit latency. So to ensure that, you can go with Azure Edge Zones. So basically, the Azure Edge Zones are something like catch locations. So when you opt for the basically when you're configuring your application, you can use the Azure Edge Zones, so that you may host your application from one particular region, and if the same application is accessed from a different location, say example, as I said earlier, in India you have hosted your application, and from US any of the customer is accessing the same application, so the application is not going to be served from India region directly. So the application will be catched to the US catch location, that is US edge zone. And from that edge zone, the service is delivered to the end user. So that the end user might be accessing your application from any part of the world. Automatically the Azure, whenever the end user is trying to access your application, immediately the Azure will understand from which location the user is accessing, trying to access the application, and immediately after and identifying the user's location, the application or the information whichever the user is trying to access, so those information will be catched to the end users nearest edge zone, and from that catch location the service is delivered, so that the latency will be very low, so that the user will experience the fast performance. So that is ultimately the user will not experience the slow performance. So that is the ultimate goal of the Azure edge zone. So basically Azure edge zone is not a full-fledged data center. It is basically a catch location. So through the catch location, the end users are served with the respective services. Is that clear? Okay, so basically this kind of edge zones are going to be used by some of the services which is in the list, that is the media streaming applications or gaming applications or any real-time analytic applications or something like that. And speaking about edge zone with carrier. So edge zone with carrier is basically for the uh, um, employees of the organization, where they should access their application or the services with a high speed, even though if the resources are in the cloud, so they should be able to access these resources as like the resources are in their on-premises location. So to achieve that, the Azure is going to use this edge zones with carrier. Basically, this service cannot be used in the regular public internet. It can be used only when you have the 5G network in your country, first of all. So nowadays, this 5G is not available in all the countries. So only in some part of the world, 5G network is available. So and again, even some part of the countries, some part of the world, they may have the 5G network, but in that location, maybe Azure might not have their data center. So in those location also, this edge zone with carrier cannot be used. So currently this edge zone with carrier is available with collaboration with the AT&T, and this particular service is available only in a few regions of the globe. Basically now it is available only in the US region, but slowly they may expand this to other countries also. And basically the service provider, the Azure will have uh, they will have a business tie-up with the internet service provider who offers the 5G network. So with the help of the 5G operator, so the Azure is going to establish the connectivity between the Azure's data center and the customers network, so that they can access their application with low latency. Again, this can be used for the application which requires a high performance. Is that clear? If there is any more questions, please let me know. Okay, so if there is no more question, we can proceed further.
I have one question.
Yes, please.
So for the edge zones, how basically it will work?
Okay, so they have a thing called traffic manager. There is a service called a traffic manager, and also one more thing called CDN, that is content delivery network. So they'll have a content delivery network which is established between all their edge zones and the master data centers. And this traffic manager, basically it is a service to discover or to identify the user's location. So there are different methods, or there is the routing methods like weight based routing, or latency based routing, or location based routing. So different mechanisms are there. So we all know every country has its own range of public IP. So by even basically by seeing the IP address itself, we can know this IP belongs to this particular country. So the user request is coming from this country, so the user data should be delivered from this country. So immediately Azure will understand that this particular request is from this particular region or this particular country, and immediately Azure catches the information to the particular country's edge location, and from there the content is delivered. And these informations are catched through the content delivery network, or the informations are transferred through the content delivery network. So which is going to happen, what to say, the within fraction of seconds. This is going to work on the back end.
Okay, there is no manual task involved. This setup.
No, there is no manual task involved. So
Okay.
basically everything is going to be managed by the Azure's services respectively.
Okay, good.
Okay. Any more questions? Others? Okay. So if there is no more question, we can move on further. Azure private edge zones. So these private edge zones are a little more interesting. Just a while before, we were speaking about the edge zones which can catch the information to the user's nearest location, and from the catch location the informations are delivered. And this private edge zone brings it a little bit more closer to the premises of the customer. So for getting this service, again, it is going to be involving the 5G network operator. So when maybe in the Las Vegas, or in the in the particular regions, or where the 5G network operator is signed up with Azure, in that particular location, obviously 5G network with high speed network, they are able to access the services. But even still further, uh, Azure will deploy some of the devices in the customer premises itself. So through that, the data or the informations are cached to the customer's premises, and from there the data are delivered to the end user. So it is like nearly the end user is accessing their data or application from their on-premises data center. So that's how the performance is going to be. So with the additional services and additional devices which has been deployed in the customer's network or the customer's location, so through that the content is catched and the content is delivered to the end user. So again, this is going to be comparing to other services, the performance is going to be little bit more higher. So that is the thing about the Azure Private Edge Zones. Clear? I'm still waiting for your response.
So in on-premises, basically, so is there any configuration required from our end?
You see, basically most of the configuration will be done by the service provider itself. As a
Mhm.
customer, you're not going to do the configuration. So basically, as like you do your application configuration and the virtual machine configuration, network configuration, only that part you will be doing, and the configurations in the hardware which is being deployed by Azure. So those is going to be done by the service provider itself. Got it? So their team will take care of those configurations.
Okay, Azure will coordinate those things, and
Yeah, Azure will provide those hardwares and softwares, and their team will configure and manage those hardware and softwares.
okay, good.
Okay. And that's all for understanding about the Azure global infrastructure. And related to this Azure global infrastructure, if you have any more questions, please let me know. Okay, so I think today we'll end up with this particular topic alone, and the remaining part of the configurations on remaining topics we'll be discussing on the next class. So hopefully in the next class we'll start with our practical demonstration with creating the Azure account, and then further we'll be discussing on all the other topics also. Okay, and thank you all for joining the session for today.
We didn't receive the link, sir. Sorry.